If you were packing for a long, grueling hike, you would probably be like obsessively weighing every single item in your backpack,
Oh, absolutely.
right? Like you'd look at every carabiner, every extra pair of socks, every single granola bar, and you critically ask yourself whether you actually need to carry it. Because the
Yeah.
calculation is pretty simple. Every ounce you pack is an ounce you have to literally drag up a mountain.
Yeah. And the physical toll of that is just immediate and obvious. I mean, when the weight is tangible like that, we become completely ruthless about what is actually essential.
Exactly.
We don't carry extra gear just to appease someone else, and we certainly aren't packing rocks just for the sake of it.
We'd think that was crazy, and yet
Hmm.
we wake up every single day, step out into our regular lives, and mentally we do exactly the opposite.
We really do.
We essentially load up our psychological backpacks with boulders. Like, we let almost anyone drop a heavy rock right in there. Say a coworker seems slightly dismissive during a morning meeting. Boom. That is a 10-pound rock of rumination you're now carrying.
Oh, or a stranger leaves a cynical comment on something you posted.
Right. That's another rock. And we just spend our entire day accumulating these heavy, jagged stones of other people's opinions and expectations and
And
judgments.
then, by 3 in the afternoon, we are completely exhausted.
It's really drained.
We sit there wondering why daily life feels so incredibly heavy, completely ignoring the fact that we consciously, or well, at least subconsciously, chose to pick up and carry all of that extra weight.
Yeah.
We treat mental energy as if it's this infinite resource, which is just a fundamental misunderstanding of how human psychology actually works.
It is. And that invisible burden, that exhausting accumulation of external weight, is exactly where we are starting our deep dive today. So, welcome in, everyone. I am really looking forward to unpacking this one with you.
It's a great topic.
It really is. We are looking at a document today titled simply 18E.docsex, and it reads like this highly practical, modern Stoic operating manual.
Which is fast.
Yeah, and if you are already familiar with Stoicism or just general mindfulness, the concepts here won't necessarily be like brand new to you. The value of this document isn't in shocking you with unprecedented ideas. It's really in how ruthlessly it dissects the mechanics of actually applying these ideas.
Yeah, that is the crucial distinction here. It's this very tightly written piece of philosophy that just skips the theoretical throat clearing.
Right, it gets right to it.
Exactly. It dives straight into the mechanics of human suffering and human freedom. I mean,
Hmm.
it acknowledges that we all know logically that we
Right.
shouldn't care so much about what other people think,
For sure, we all know that.
but it goes a step further to explain the internal mechanisms of why we still do it anyway and how we can actually stop.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, to bridge the gap between that high-level philosophy in the text and the actual messy friction of your daily life. We're going to extract the core insights on how to achieve functional psychological freedom. And the text begins with a very direct argument. It says, life becomes lighter the moment you stop measuring your worth through the opinions of others.
What's fascinating here is that this is a foundational opening statement because it identifies the core metric we use to evaluate our lives.
The metric itself is the problem.
Precisely. The text explicitly links our daily fears, our chronic disappointments, and our underlying emotional struggles directly to our constant desire for approval, recognition and acceptance.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It argues that a huge portion of our emotional pain isn't created by our material reality, but by the metric we are using to measure our success. So if the metric is being liked, we are essentially rigging the game against ourselves.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to look closer at that specific definition of the authentic self the text brings up here. The phrase authentic self gets thrown around a lot in modern self-help.
Oh, constantly. It's a huge buzzword.
Right. But this document frames it as an operational state, not just a buzzword. It argues that your authentic self can only emerge when you actively stop allowing other people's judgments to dictate your happiness.
And the reasoning the text provides for that is just spot on. It suggests that as long as you're outsourcing your self-worth to the crowd, you are, by definition, not operating authentically.
You're just reacting.
Exactly. You are operating reactively. You are constantly contorting your decisions, your tone of voice, even your major life choices to reflect what you anticipate the crowd wants to see.
Wow. Yeah.
The text argues that true authenticity requires a total decoupling from that external validation system.
I was trying to find a way to visualize the mechanics of this, and it feels a lot like algorithmic high-frequency trading in the stock market?
I like that.
Yeah, so imagine if you tied your internal sense of self-worth to a highly volatile public exchange. One day, you get praised at work, your stock surges, and your brain just floods with dopamine.
Best day ever.
Right. But then the next day, someone gives you a weird look or leaves your text on read, and the market crashes and your nervous system goes into a complete state of panic.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. If your emotional baseline is tied to the constant split-second volatility of how other people perceive you, you are essentially functioning as an emotional day trader.
That analogy highlights the exact problem the text is pointing out. It's the issue of volatility and control. Because, you cannot control the public exchange.
Yeah, not at all.
You cannot control what other people think or the biases they hold, how they interpret your actions, or honestly, even what mood they happen to be in when they interact with you.
Right. They might just be having a bad morning.
Exactly. Yet we just hand over the administrative rights of our nervous systems to these completely uncontrollable external factors. So delisting yourself from that public exchange is literally the only way to stabilize your emotional baseline.
So let's say you do that. Let's say you actually manage to delist yourself and you stop day trading your self-worth based on other people's opinions. Okay.
Stripping away that external validation leaves a kind of vacuum. And reading further into the source material, it becomes really clear that if we aren't careful, we just fill that void with our own internal toxicity.
Yes.
The text pivots here and says that if the problem isn't just other people's opinions, we have to do a rigorous internal audit.
This is where the document moves from those external boundaries to our internal architecture. It essentially instructs the reader to stop blaming circumstances or people for their state of mind.
Which is easier said than done.
Oh, much easier said than done. Instead, it challenges us to examine our own internal expectations, our attachments, and our resistance to reality itself.
Right.
The core argument here is that true transformation begins from within. Because even when you strip away the opinions of others, you're still left with your own internal demands about how the world should operate. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I want to test that logic. This is where a lot of people kind of check out when reading Stoic philosophy, and I want to offer some pushback on behalf of anyone listening who might be in a genuinely tough spot.
Sure, let's hear it.
Because it is incredibly easy to read a philosophical line about, not blaming circumstances when you're sitting in a comfortable armchair.
Right.
But what if a situation genuinely is unfair? Like, what if you get laid off through absolutely no fault of your own, or a relationship ends because a partner deeply betrays you?
Yeah, real trauma.
Exactly. Why should we immediately turn the audit inward on our own thoughts? Doesn't that just let a highly flawed world off the hook for being awful?
This raises an important question, and honestly, that is the exact friction point where most people misinterpret the philosophy.
Yeah.
So we need to parse the language of the text very carefully here.
Okay.
The document isn't advocating for toxic positivity.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't telling you to just deny reality or to pretend that bad things don't happen or to excuse terrible behavior from other people.
So it's not saying everything happens for a reason.
No, not at all. It is specifically pointing to our resistance to reality as the primary source of our ongoing suffering.
Resistance to reality. So the distinction here is between what actually happens and the story we tell ourselves about what happens.
Yes.
Tell me more about how the text defines that resistance.
Well, we can break it down into two separate components: pain versus suffering. The circumstance itself, let's use your example of the unfair layoff. That is a hard fact. It happened.
Right, it's undeniable.
And that event brings natural, unavoidable pain and very real logistical challenges. You have to figure out your finances, you have to go find a new job. The text fully acknowledges that pain.
Right, the pain is a biological and logistical reality.
Exactly. But the suffering, the deep, agonizing emotional turmoil that keeps you staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. for months on end, that doesn't come from the layoff itself.
Where does it come from then?
That comes from your expectation that the layoff shouldn't happen. It comes from your mental resistance to accepting the new reality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it comes from just shouting into the void that the universe is unfair. The text isn't blaming you for the event. It's trying to show you that arguing with reality is a battle you will lose 100% of the time, and it only serves to prolong your suffering.
So it's about identifying that secondary reaction. The layoff is the first hit. But the narrative of I'm a failure or the world is entirely rigged against me, That is the secondary hit, and that's the one we're actually inflicting on ourselves.
That is the precise monism of resistance. When you stop resisting the fact that reality is chaotic and sometimes deeply unfair, you reclaim your agency.
You take the power back.
Exactly. You stop being a passive victim of an unfair circumstance, and you become an active participant in your own response. You can control your internal expectations and your next steps, even when the external circumstances are completely outside of your control.
Okay, I see the logic there. If we stop demanding that the world conform to our expectations, we eliminate the friction of that resistance. But that brings us to a very practical and honestly uncomfortable reality.
Right?
If we are doing this internal audit, giving up the chase for external approval, and actually trying to live authentically based on our own values, we are inevitably going to collide with failure.
Oh, inevitably.
Right. If you stop trying to impress everyone, you are going to ruffle feathers. If you take risks aligned with your values, you are going to mess up. So how does the text suggest we handle the very real setbacks that happen when we put this philosophy into action?
Well, the source material is highly pragmatic about this exact scenario. It doesn't promise that living authentically will result in this smooth, effortless life. In fact, it asserts the complete opposite.
Warns you.
It does. It warns the reader that criticism, failure, and being misunderstood are absolute inevitabilities. You cannot avoid them, so trying to engineer a life where they don't happen is just a massive waste of energy.
Yeah.
The goal, according to the text, is not to avoid failure, but to fundamentally change your relationship with it.
And the text offers a very specific reframe for that. It says that criticisms and failures do not define your value, which, sounds nice on a bumper sticker, but it goes further to explain why.
Right.
It states that every setback teaches resilience, every mistake offers wisdom, and every difficult experience strengthens character. There is one specific line here that completely reframes the mechanics of failure. It says, "Growth is often hidden inside discomfort."
It's such a brilliant way to neutralize the paralyzing fear of getting things wrong. I mean, if your inner peace is derived from living authentically and learning, rather than from executing everything flawlessly and earning praise, then failure is no longer a threat to your identity.
It's just part of the process.
Exactly. It simply becomes data. It becomes the necessary friction required to gain wisdom.
When we talk about the mechanics of growth being hidden inside discomfort, the most tangible way to understand this is to look at physical exercise.
Oh, absolutely.
If you go to the gym and lift heavy weights, your muscles are going to burn. You are going to experience acute physical discomfort. But you don't drop the weights, walk out of the gym, and think, oh no, my muscles are burning, I must be completely failing at fitness.
Of course not. You understand that the discomfort isn't an error code, it's a feature of the process.
Exactly. The burn isn't a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is the exact biological mechanism required to build strength. You are intentionally causing micro tears in the muscle tissue so the body can repair them and grow back stronger.
Yes.
And what the text is arguing is that emotional and psychological growth operates on the exact same biological and psychological principles.
That analogy translates perfectly to the text's thesis. I mean, we are socially conditioned to view emotional discomfort like the sting of criticism or the embarrassment of a public failure as a signal to just stop.
Right. A giant red stop sign.
We view it as absolute proof that we took a wrong turn.
But the text is saying that emotional burn is just a psychological micro tear. When you face criticism for standing up for your values, or when you fail at a project you care deeply about, that discomfort isn't a sign that your life is falling apart.
Yeah.
It is the micro tear in your character that allows resilience to actually materialize.
And internalizing that mechanism fundamentally alters how you navigate the world.
Yeah.
You stop playing it safe just to avoid criticism. You start making decisions based on your actual values, knowing full well that even if the outcome is objectively a failure, you're going to extract necessary wisdom from the friction of that experience.
It takes the fear out of it.
Completely. It removes the existential threat from taking risks.
I buy that. Logically, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But let's ground this in the messy reality of being human for a second.
Let's do it.
When you are right in the middle of a massive failure or you are facing a tidal wave of criticism, your brain's amygdala is firing on all cylinders. You are in a full-blown fight-or-flight state.
Oh, yeah, panic mode.
It is incredibly difficult in that moment to take a deep breath and say, Wonderful. I am experiencing the necessary micro tears of character growth.
Nobody does that naturally.
No, usually you are just panicking, but the source material anticipates this, and it actually provides a cognitive mechanism to survive that acute in-the-moment discomfort.
It does. And it achieves this by introducing a massive shift in perspective through the lens of time. The text offers this reassurance, stating that most worries that seem overwhelming today will eventually become distant memories.
Yeah.
It points out that time consistently reveals that the things we categorized as life-ruining problems were, in reality, just temporary obstacles.
So what does this all mean? It's what I call the time machine effect. It's this cognitive realization that looking back, our greatest periods of growth almost always stemmed from the exact challenges we thought would completely braid us at the time.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying psychology here is about how we process threats. We have this deeply ingrained habit of catastrophizing the present moment.
We really do.
Because we are trapped in the present, we lack the temporal distance to see that the current crisis is just a single data point on the long graph of our lives.
Right.
The text is demanding that we learn how to artificially manufacture that temporal distance right in the present moment.
And that is the hardest part of this entire philosophy. How do we actually execute that cognitive shift? Like, how do we mentally fast forward to that future perspective when the present moment feels like the walls are caving in?
It takes practice.
Because it is very easy to look back at a crisis from 5 years ago and calmly analyze it. It is incredibly hard to look at today's disaster and genuinely convince your nervous system that it won't matter in a few years. What is the actual mechanism for zooming out?
Well, the mechanism requires engaging your prefrontal cortex to override the immediate panic of your amygdala. And the text suggests doing this through deliberate practice questioning. You have to actively borrow wisdom from your future self. When the panic hits, you have to force a pause and explicitly ask yourself, will this specific event dictate my happiness in a week, in a month, in 5 years?
Wow, okay.
By forcing your brain to evaluate the timeline, you break the illusion that the current pain is permanent.
So it's an active cognitive reappraisal. You are literally forcing your brain to look at the historical data.
Precisely. Most of the time, when you project forward, you realize the current crisis won't even be a footnote in a year. And even for the major life events that will still matter in a year, you can objectively recognize that the acute, suffocating intensity of the panic you feel today will have dissipated.
The intensity fades.
Exactly. The text is urging you to trust the process of time as a daily practice.
It's like building a mental muscle of perspective. You have to deliberately recall all the previous life-ruining events in your past that you were entirely convinced would destroy you, but didn't.
They never do.
Right. Statistically speaking, you have survived 100% of your worst days. The text isn't just offering empty comfort, it's pointing to the empirical evidence of your own life. Those past challenges didn't break you. They became the architecture of who you are right now. The obstacle isn't in the way. The obstacle is the actual path forward.
And when you start to connect these individual mechanisms together, when you delist your self-worth from the public exchange of other people's opinions, when you stop arguing with the reality of your circumstances, when you reframe failure as the biological mechanism of growth, and when you actively use that temporal distancing to manage panic.
You put it all together.
Exactly. You arrive at the ultimate synthesis of the source document.
Which brings us to the conclusion of the text, and it is a bold, uncompromising statement. The document ends by saying, "The day you stop living for others' approval and start living according to your own values is the day you experience real freedom."
It is a profound summary of everything we've unpacked today. It serves as a reminder that genuine peace, confidence, and happiness are not found in successfully bending the external world to your will.
No.
They are not found in carefully curating an image so that everyone likes you, or in navigating life so cautiously that you never face a setback. Those are all external games that you ultimately cannot win.
You just can't.
Real freedom is discovered entirely by transforming your internal architecture. How you see yourself, how you measure your worth, and how you process friction.
It really is a radical inversion of how we are socially conditioned to operate. Like, we are taught to expend almost all of our energy trying to change our circumstances, trying to manipulate how people perceive us, and trying to secure our status.
Oh, absolutely.
We try to carpet the entire world so we never have to step on a thorn. And this document is quietly but firmly telling us that the math on that simply doesn't work.
The math doesn't work because the world is too big and too chaotic to carpet. The Stoic approach, the approach outlined in this text,
Hmm.
is to stop trying to carpet the world and instead just put on a sturdy pair of shoes.
I love that framing. The shoes are your internal awareness, your defined values, and your reframed relationship with failure. Once you have those shoes on, you can walk over any terrain, no matter how jagged, unpredictable, or unfair it happens to be.
Precisely.
Which brings us right back to where we started this deep dive, that invisible backpack we all carry around, constantly loading it up with the heavy boulders of other people's fleeting opinions and our own toxic expectations about how the world should be.
Yeah.
The text we explore today is essentially handing you the instructions on how to take the backpack off. You do not have to carry the exhausting weight of the world's judgment. You do not have to carry the paralyzing fear of failure. You can simply choose to set it down.
It's a choice.
It really is. But before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over as you step back into the reality of your day. We talked at length about the text's assertion that our greatest periods of growth and wisdom come directly from the very challenges we thought would break us. The discomfort is the mechanism of growth.
Right.
So I want you to think about your life right now, in this exact moment. What if the very thing you are resisting the most, the situation you are currently dreading, or the potential failure you are most terrified of experiencing, what if that exact thing is not a barrier to your happiness, but the specific necessary curriculum you need to unlock your next stage of personal evolution?
That's a powerful thought.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, check the weight of your backpacks, and we'll catch you on the next one.